Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Stephanie and here we talk about all things books and book adjacent. I read 110 books in 2023, and out of those 110 books, I rated 24 of those books 5 stars. Now, I am someone who rates books pretty much immediately after finishing them, and that is something that I want to kind of change in 2024. I want to sit with the book a little bit, sit with the rating, because a lot of times I think that I'm rating the reading experience rather than rating the actual book. And while reading experience is a part of a rating, and I think it would and should always be part of a rating, it's not the whole rating. I thought it would be interesting to go through all of my 5-star books from 2023, show them to you, and then also talk about if I think that the rating still holds up or not, now that I've had some time to sit and actually reflect on the book. Some of these are from when I first started reading. I might have thought that they were 5-star books at the time, but now that I've read more, I have different feelings. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's just hop right into it. My first 5-star of 2023 was The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox by Maggie O'Farrell. This was a domestic family drama. It's about a young woman who finds out that she has an aunt that she didn't know anything about, and her aunt is getting released from a psychiatric facility and she needs a family member's house to go to, and there's no other family to reach out to, so they somehow find this woman and she decides that yes, she is going to take her aunt in. You get multiple POVs in this book. You get past and present. The aunt who's being released from the psychiatric facility, her portions of the story are all told in kind of a poetry prose format, and it's really, really interesting. You get lots of family tea and drama in this book. I really enjoyed it. There were a bunch of plot twists and I just really enjoyed this one. I do think that this holds up as a 5-star book for me. Remember all of the details from the book. I think about the book often, and it is overall just a solid domestic drama, and I highly recommend it. Second book that I gave 5 stars is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I know that most people have heard about this book as it is extremely popular. It follows a reporter who is doing a feature on a celebrity named Evelyn Hugo who has been married 7 times. She wants to finally tell the story of her life after being very private and secretive for most of it. You just get her story. It sounds simple. I promise you, this book is not simple. This book is so good. Like, if you hear that synopsis and you're like, it sounds kind of boring. No. I just don't want to give stuff away. It's not boring. And Taylor Jenkins Reid, I love her writing. I know that, it's popular, it's basic, whatever. It's popular for a reason. And I stand by that 5-star 100%. Next 5-star book was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And I know that this is a controversial one. You either kind of love or hate this book, I feel like. I was in the love camp. This book was exactly what I needed in that moment in time. And I can understand how if you read this book at the wrong time in life, that it would be annoying, preachy, simplified, but it was what I needed at the time. It's about a girl who tries to take her own life, and instead of dying, she's brought to this library where there are thousands of books, and in each book are all different lives that she could have lived. And she's able to open up those books and kind of jump right into those lives and see how things would have been for her if she would have done one little thing differently. The message of this book really hit me hard, and it was at a time where I was regretting a lot of my choices and feeling like I made mistakes and that I wish I would have done things differently. And it kind of made me appreciate right where I was, and it sort of like changed the trajectory of my mind a little bit. And so for that reason, I would say it was 100%, it stands up as a 5-star book. Fourth book was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This is a thriller about a couple who win a trip to a cabin from the wife's work. The cabin is really creepy and things start happening. The book is told in multiple POVs, and you also get the POV of letters that this wife has written her husband over the course of time. One main thing that I didn't mention is that their marriage is in like peril, it's in trouble. And so the reason why she wants to go on this trip is to try to basically reconnect and fix their marriage. But creepy stuff starts happening in the house, secrets are revealed and unraveled. And what I will say about this book is it is so fast paced. Every single chapter was a huge cliffhanger at the end. And I read this book so unbelievably fast. And while I will say that it was an extremely good book, now that I've read more thrillers, I think that it would be more of a 4-star read for me at this point. So I don't think it holds up as a 5-star, but I do still definitely recommend the book. Fifth book that I gave 5 stars this year was House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is a super cute cozy fantasy about a man who works at the Department of Magical Youth, and he's basically a social worker who goes into the homes of different magical youth who are living in foster homes basically, and he inspects the homes and makes sure that they're up to regulations. He's kind of feeling bored, like he's living a very mundane life, and then randomly he gets sent on a special assignment where he has to go to this house that's in the Cerulean Sea and it's like a top secret case because all of these children are like extra dangerous, and so he has to go and do this like extra dangerous assignment to make sure that these kids are okay. And it ends up being a really cute found family story. I absolutely adored this book, and I do feel like it holds up as a 5 stars. And we're getting a second book, I think, at the end of this year. Super excited about that. The Maid's Diary by Lorith Ann White. Now, I remember absolutely loving this book and thinking that it was one of my favorite thrillers that I've ever read. I remember the reading experience being so positive. I remember not expecting or predicting the twists, but I barely remember anything about the plot of the book. And so for that reason, I don't think that in good faith I could give it 5 stars. I don't even remember enough about the plot to really tell you much about it. Only thing I can remember was it was about this a maid who has a snooping problem. She ends up finding all of these secrets about this family who she's working for. There's lots of twists and turns. The only reason I want to say that I wouldn't reread it is because I do remember the major twists. I don't know, maybe I will reread it just to see if it still holds up as a 5 star, because this is one of those that I'm like genuinely not sure about. But I think because I barely remember it, I'm going to have to demote it to the 4.5 star range. Next was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a queer romance about a prince and first son of the first woman president. This book was adorable. It was so freaking cute. And I loved the political aspects of it thrown in there. This was made into a movie this year on Amazon Prime. Don't watch it, but read this book. Highly recommend for a super cute romance. Yes, it definitely still holds up as 5 stars for me. Okay, super excited about this next one, Ink Blood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. I have never seen anybody talk about this book, and I'm shocked because it was a book of the month book last year. This is a standalone fantasy book that I actually would love if it was made into a series. It's a slight magical realism. The magic is like book based, which is really interesting. It follows 2 sisters who are estranged, and one of them has left home to get away from everything, and one of them stayed to take care of their mother after their father's passing. The magical elements of the story are really cool. There's lesbian representation in the book, which I always love. It follows multiple POVs. Then in the middle, it starts to follow another story, and it follows these stories in a way that you feel like you're just going back and forth. But then when they connect in a way that I wasn't expecting. The whole time I was thinking, how are these stories going to connect? Like, I don't know. And I was enjoying both of them separately, but I was like, when is this going to come together? And when it did, I loved it. There was also a little bit of a found family trope in here. And if you're looking for a standalone fantasy, since those are so extremely rare, I highly recommend this book and it definitely holds up as a 5-star for me. I think about it all the time. Next, we have All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. This is a thriller about a mom whose child, her young son, was abducted and she has since separated from her husband. She is really not doing well. She's not sleeping. She's not really like functioning or getting back to her life. She does a lot of speaking engagements at different events about missing children, and she tells her son's story and her story all the time. And she's approached by a true crime podcaster who wants to do an episode on her son's case. He solved cold cases before through his podcast, so he basically is offering his help, and she agrees to do it, and the story unravels from there. I loved this book. Every chapter ended on a huge cliffhanger, and the writing was fantastic, which I think is often lacking in thrillers. Definitely holds up as a 5-star for me. Next up, we have Mary Jane by Jessica Ann Blau. This is a super cute coming of age book that takes place in a neighborhood in Baltimore that I used to live in. Because of that, I was absolutely enamored by the book and the description of the neighborhood. I mean, this was a good book. It's about a 14-year-old girl who begins nannying for a family who's very different from hers. They're much more free-spirited, whereas her family is very conservative and uptight. And it's just all about her, like, kind of learning about life with this family. I don't know if it holds up as a 5-star, though. I really don't. I think I was super enamored by the Baltimore of it all, that it was a little more elevated in my mind. So I think I would knock this one down to a 4 or a 4.5, but I do still definitely recommend the book. It was really cute. Next, we have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Oh, this was one of my favorite books of the year. It was so romantic. The fantasy element of it was a lot lighter, and this was before I had really gotten into fantasy. So for me, it was a really great introduction. This is the first book in the Letters of Enchantment duology. It has blown up this year, so I'm sure you've heard of it. We're following Iris and Roman, who start out as workplace rivals, and there is a war going on between two gods. Iris's brother is fighting in the war, and so she's living with her mother and she's really missing her brother. She ends up writing her brother a letter on her typewriter and putting it under her closet door. And the next day she wakes up and the letter is gone. Really interesting premise, but it's about so much more than that. And the romance in this book is really sweet. The writing is absolutely beautiful. There are some incredible quotes in this book. I highly recommend it, and it definitely stands up as a 5-star book. Next, Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Another Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I was absolutely obsessed with. This follows a retired tennis star named Carrie Soto who finds out that her world record is about to be beat, so she decides to come out of retirement and start playing tennis again. All her life she was coached by her father, and she asks her father to start coaching her again. That's the bare bones of the story. The way that this book explores the father-daughter relationship was so incredible. Tennis was a huge aspect in this book, and I went in knowing nothing about tennis, and I went out wanting to start watching tennis. Like, I really liked the tennis aspect. This book was super emotional. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid's books have always made me cry, all of the ones that I've read. I cried through pretty much the last third of this book, but it was amazing. Highly recommend. Definitely stands up as a 5-star. Next, we have She Gets the Girl by Rachel Lippincott. This is a super cute YA romance about a girl who goes to college and she meets another girl who's starting college, and they are in very different kind of situations. One of them is very independent, has had relationships before, and the other has kind of been more sheltered, and they both have crushes on other girls, and they decide that they're gonna help each other get the girl. This book fucking eats. When I tell you, the romance in this book is the fucking cutest thing ever. Oh my god, definitely still a 5-star. I think about it all the time. Pretty sure it's my favorite queer rom-com that I have read so far. Yes, 5 stars. Next up, we have None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is a thriller that came out in August. It follows 2 characters. Both had just turned, I think, either 40 or 45. They meet at a restaurant because they are both celebrating their birthday. They run into each other in the bathroom and discover that they're birthday twins. Now, you're getting that perspective from each of those characters, and also the perspective of a future Netflix series called I'm Your Birthday Twin that was created about these 2 women. So you know that some shit went down, but you don't know what went down yet. As the book continues, like, it is so gripping. I was fully invested. Lisa Jewell's thrillers are always so creepy and unsettling. That is the word that I use to describe Lisa Jewell's writing, unsettling. This book was unsettling to the extreme. It was so well written. It was so good. I did not guess what was going to happen. I was wanting to know what was going to happen the whole time. I couldn't stop reading it. Read it in like 2 sittings. Definitely a 5-star book. Next book we have is Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a literary fiction book that was also super, super popular in 2022 and 2023. It is following Sadie and Sam from their childhood all the way into adulthood as they create a video game together. Now, that is a very, 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 very abridged explanation of what happens in this book. This book reads kind of like a nonfiction in a way because you're really focused on the creation of this thing. I love books like that, so I was eating that part up. I loved the creation of the video game aspect. The rest of it was good, but I think I was so kind of impressed with how this book was written and the way that it felt so real. Like, you could not convince me that these games that they made didn't exist. I thought that was so crazy. But as far as like the characters and the rest of the plot, when I look back on it, there were some things about it that bothered me. So I think that for that reason, I am going to deduct it to a 4.5 star, but I loved the book. Next up, we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and this is where I get to tell you that I am a person who is susceptible to hype. If a book is hyped, I go in like, this is going to be a 5-star book, and I think a lot of times that affects my rating because if I even just like slightly enjoy it, I'm like, yep, everyone was right. This is a 5-star book. Instead of like really thinking about it and being like, okay, yeah, like I enjoyed it, and that's what this book is for me. It was super, super entertaining. I mean, I read it really quickly. It was really interesting. It is about a war college where they're trying to become dragon riders. The stakes are very high. Lots of people die from trying to get through this program. And we're following Violet, who is the daughter of like the war commander. So she's forced into this dragon riding situation that she doesn't want to do. She wanted to be a scribe, but because of who her mother is, she has to try. I mean, listen, it was a good book, but I'm not going to lie. The writing was a little bit mid. I'm sorry. It wasn't that, it was a little mid. So honestly, when I honestly think back on Fourth Wing, it was a 4-star book. It wasn't a 5-star book. It was a 4-star book, but I definitely had a good time reading it. It's not bad. It's not a 5-star for me. Next, we have Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, one of my all-time favorite books of the year. Crooked Kingdom is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. It's a fantasy book. It's a part of the Grisha-verse, and Grisha are people who have these like magical powers in this world. It's about this group of teenagers who are in a gang, and they end up kind of creating their own little like subgroup in this gang to complete a heist. This is such a bare bones description of this book, but here's what I'm going to tell you. The found family in this book slays. The characters in this book, obsessed with all of them. Multiple POVs. You get POVs from almost every like main character in the book. Emotional, heart-wrenching. I was fully engrossed in this world, and I read it at a time where I really needed to be fully engrossed in another world. And Six of Crows for me was just fine because I'm not gonna lie, I had a hard time understanding and wrapping my head around the whole world. And I found out that that's because you really should actually read the Shadow and Bone trilogy before you go into Six of Crows. But once I like got it and I read Crooked Kingdom and I really got it going in, obsessed. 5 stars. Next up, we have Ace of Spades by Farida Abike-Yamide, I believe is how you pronounce it. This is a young adult dark academia book, and all I'm going to say about this is that it was described to me as Gossip Girl meets Get Out. 100% accurate description. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to give too much away, but read it. Definitely hold up as a 5 star. Next, we have The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. This is a domestic thriller, and I effing loved this book. I loved this book. I loved this book. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to warn you. I think it's like the first few pages or the first chapter is confusing. It doesn't make sense, but read it. Kind of like get as much as you can get, but don't freak out and think that the entire book is going to be read that way, because it's not. The way that it starts is kind of this like overview snapshot of different things that are happening at this party, and you don't know the names of anyone yet and you know nothing about them, so you're kind of reading it like, am I supposed to care? Just wait and read it, and then you'll get it and you'll care. Ashley Audrain writes books about motherhood, at least the 2 that I've read, and they are super, super gritty, super, super uncomfortable, super hard to read. Her writing is absolutely fantastic. Plot was on point. Cliffhangers were on point. I was engaged through the whole book, and I remember the whole time just thinking like, I love this book. I love this book. I love this book. So if you like domestic thrillers, definitely recommend. Definitely holds up as a 5 star. Next, we have Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. I know that I am late to the train on this book, but oh my God, I loved this book, and I did not think that I would love it because there is a time loop trope in it. It is a time loop thriller. So it is about this mom who looks out the window and she sees her son murdering somebody, and then she wakes up the next day and it is the day before. So murder didn't happen yet, and she is essentially trying to stop this murder from happening. That is all that I'm going to say, because that's all that I knew going into it, and I was utterly surprised by this book. The plot twists got me. The writing was really good. Yeah, this was just my surprise of the year, and it definitely holds up as 5 stars for me. Next, we have Set the Record Straight by Hannah Bonham Young. This is a super short FF Christmas novella. I just rated this 5 stars because the romance was absolutely so adorable. When I'm really looking back at it, it's kind of like, do I really rate a book that's 160 pages 5 stars? I don't know, but if you want a really cute winter Christmas romance with very little conflict, I do really recommend this book. It probably is more of like a 4.5 star rather than a 5, but it's adorable. Next, we have We Deserve Monuments by Jas Hammonds. This book is incredible. It is a queer YA coming of age book. There's a cute YA FF romance in here, but it is also a family drama. It is about a girl who's a senior in high school, and she and her parents have to suddenly move to the deep south in order to take care of her grandmother who is passing away. And this story is all about just her getting to know and form a relationship with her grandmother, who she has only met one time previously, learning about her mom's relationship with her grandma and all of these family secrets that she didn't know about. She's finding herself. She's figuring it out. There's a slight subplot of mystery. It touches on racism in the Deep South, her experience, because she came from DC, her experience as a young woman of color in DC versus as a young woman of color in the Deep South. It's about friendship. It's about love. It's about family. It really touches on every topic. It's done so well. This was Jas Hammonds' debut book, and I absolutely cannot believe it. If any of these books stands up as a 5 star, it is this one. This is by far one of my favorite books of the year. Highly, highly recommend it. And then I have two honorable mentions, which are books that I know that I rated 5 stars at the time that I read them, but I actually disagreed with those ratings enough to go back into my Goodreads and change them. First one is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Looking back, I realized that I rated this book 5 stars because I just read it quickly, and I read it after reading a slower book. So the fact that I was like getting through it quickly meant so much to me at the time, but now that I've read so many other thrillers, it just like doesn't stand up as a 5 star for me. It's not bad. I am not a hater of this book. I went back and I rated it 3 stars. It's really more of like a 3.5, maybe even a 4. For some reason I cannot decide on my rating for this book. The second one that I rated 5 stars at the time, but then went back and demoted it to 4 stars is Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. This book was super emotional, kind of character study of these two women who have lived very different lives, but both of them had gone through very hard things, and it follows them up until then they meet and they start to have a relationship, but both of them have trust issues and all of these things. I thought it was going to be like an FF romance, but it's really like a literary fiction book with a subplot of an FF romance. And I'm not going to lie, this book was so sad. Like, this book like broke me emotionally, and because I cried and felt so intensely while reading this book, I gave it a 5 stars at the time. But now looking back, it wasn't a 5 star, it just made me cry. So I went back, demoted that to a 4 star. But if you are looking for a really intense book with queer main characters, I do highly recommend Yerba Buena. Also, the cover is beautiful. All right, those were all of my 5-star books from 2023. A lot of them held up, some of them did not. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. I really, really, really appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.